Hi, this is Akovia, and I'm back with part 5 of the Gimp from Scratch tutorial series. Um, in this one, I figured we'd cap it off with by doing a clear art, which involves rendering and then putting a logo together. And with what we've covered so far, you should have the basics to do just about any artwork on the site. Now, obviously, each piece of art has its own little subtleties that you're going to have to learn skills to deal with, but you should be able to make banners and thumbs. The two difficult ones being the clear arts and the logos. So we're gonna do we're gonna render out. I found this image. We're gonna render it out, and I am by no means a hair expert, but this one doesn't look too difficult. The one thing, I don't do too much hair since I'm mostly working on my anime collection, and eventually I will probably get a good bit better at it, but I think we can handle this. The one thing I've noticed from watching a few tutorials before and some recently on the site is that the whole key to rendering out hair is isolating the hair from the background. And there's a zillion ways to do that. There are plugins, you can use high pass filters and levels and masks and so on and so forth. It's just finding what works for that image. I have an idea and we'll see if it works out on this okay. Um, so in any case, let's take a look at this image here. I actually like the car, but obviously for our clear art you can't crop on the left side, and but I don't see any reason. Nobody's holding a gun or anything that distinguishes right and left hands, so this would be a perfect candidate to just flip the image. We'll have to deal with the license plate, but that's no big deal. And looking at how this will compose, I think this will work out real well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my path tool to render out all these bodies and the car, and then I'll try a technique to get the hair out the best I can, and I don't think it's going to be too terribly difficult. We've got some different background colors here to deal with, but these are both on solid backgrounds, which should make it a lot easier. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do, which I haven't done before, is I made some folders to this is my project for All Things to All Men, and I'll put everything that we've made in the exports. Right now I'm on save XCF images, so you're not seeing everything in the export. You could just go to all files and see those, and an XCF folder for all our project files. So I'm going to go ahead and see, I'll just copy that here and call it render instead. Then once we have it rendered, we'll make a project file for the actual clear art. So now that that's saved, always duplicate a layer. I like to keep an untouched image at the bottom, and just for the sake of it, oops, I'll put that back in its original form. So that is truly the original. And here's the one we're going to render out. And so I will start by rendering these components. And one thing I can do, if you're having trouble, it may be hard to see down in here where to do the wheel and do the undercarriage there, and there may be some other spots that are hard to distinguish. So a good idea, go ahead and duplicate that again, and what I can do is just use my level tool, zoom in a little bit here, and we'll make it a little bit brighter, as bright as we need to. Now I should be able to make a nice path under that wheel, and we should just be able to follow the contour right here fairly easily. I mean, we can really kind of zoom it in and get an idea what we want to do, but this will allow us to help find our edges to lay our path down. And you can also use this in reverse. If we reset it and there's some low contrast between lighter values, you can use your darkening and help find edges that way. The whole key is to find the edges, and you can use all kinds of different tricks to help you realize where the edges are. So for now I'm going to work on bodies. I'm not going to work on this, but I'll leave this layer probably right around in there, and if I need to it, I can just use it and turn it on as needed. We're going to be using our path tool to render these out, and just pick a spot where you want to start and start laying down your nodes. Now everybody has their own technique that works for them, and you're going to have to find what works for you. This is the way that I do it, and what I do is I just place my nodes at basically turning points and corners, and then I'll go back and I'll tweak them to the actual size or shape that I need. A lot of people will actually tweak out the paths as they go, and if that's quicker for you and you like to do that, there's no reason why you shouldn't. There are so many different styles to doing this that you just have to find what works for you. This is what works for me. I've been doing it this way for a long time. So I just try to find points. I'm going to actually take that up there a little bit, that I think I can stretch to without having to add a bunch of nodes later. And that will be the first one. So now it's just a matter of going back, and a couple little tricks that you'll pick up is what I do. There's a couple ways to pull out nodes. You can grab the line itself to yank out a node in the direction that you want to. That's one way, and I use that way a lot. The things you have to consider is that if you want to pull it out close to the node, or you'll pull out the other handle. See, if I pull it out in the middle, it brings out both. And if you pull it out at the one end, you should only be pulling out the one handle. The other way is if you use the control key on the node, you can pull out a handle, but inevitably I'm always pulling out the wrong handle. There's no way to tell it I want the handle, this handle, and not this handle. So I don't use that, but a lot of people do use that way. And if you're pulling out both handles, it doesn't really matter. You just have to figure out which one you have first, and then pull out the second one. So the way that I would do it is I use the shift key a lot of times when I'm holding a line, and it'll pull out both handles perpendicular, which gives you a nice smooth line. You don't have any kinks in it that way. And obviously sometimes you don't want you want a sharp angle, so you just have to look at what you're doing and decide what's the best way to do it for that particular node. So let's just get on with it here. I may speed this up after I've shown a little bit how to go about that. You can use your control key and add a node. Oops. Kind of bring it in that way. You can always just hit the shift key on a single handle as well. And these are all little tricks. Let's see what that looks like here with our brightness. I think that looks pretty good, but this can definitely come down in a little bit like that. Then this can come over. So the more time you spend placing your nodes and tweaking in to get the exact edges, number one, the better it'll look, of course, but it'll be less work after you've rendered it to touch up areas. So I try to spend the time here to get it as close as I possibly can. Take that up in a little bit. So I'll probably just do this first one at real speed, and then I'll do the other ones so you can actually see me doing them, but I'll speed it up so you don't have to go through the tediousness of this whole thing. But I think it's important to actually see the decisions that have to be made on where you want to place your nodes. Now I'm adding more nodes than I normally do just to make this go a little bit quicker, because this is going to be down about this size, and with such small people the very fine details are going to be hard to see. But normally I would try and do more of dragging out the handles instead of adding a node in the middle like that. I think that should be in a little bit more. Almost there. Alright, so that was a quickie. Let's give ourselves some background layers to look at, and what we'll do is, I know that's the only path, so when I do path to selection with control P, it'll grab the only path that I have, and you can see it there. I'll copy and paste it up here, and there's our body. So the first thing I would do is look at it against the different backgrounds, and on this one, uh, black is going to be the one that's going to reveal any problems. And see, we've got a little bit of white edges. They're not that big of a deal, but if you want to touch them up, the way that I would do this, there's a couple ways you could do this on this one. And one way is the dodge burn tool, and basically you pick what range you want. Oops. Shadows, midtones, or highlights, and since we want to get rid of the whiteness here, or the highlight colors, I would pick highlights. This is the rate of how much it'll darken or lighten if you're doing a burn instead. I mean a dodge instead. We want burn. So I'm going to bring my brush size down a little bit, and you can see that it just subtly, even at a high rate, is darkening that up. And if you zoom out a little bit, you can see that. And you can still use your, if you got long straight edges, you can use your brush like that and have it go instead of having to manually go around every little bit. And see, that already looks a little bit better. You don't see those highlights sticking out at you. The other way is using your paintbrush in the color erase mode. So, oops, right there, P for paint. Now, here's all your modes for your paintbrush. This one right here is color erase. So if we want to take the whitish color out, we'll just paint with color erase. You can see it just takes the whiteness right out of it. This is very handy, and I think this is a great tool to use for hair as well. And the nice thing about this is it also kind of fades, since it's making what it erases transparent. So you're going to have a semi-transparent edge, and it won't be a real hard edge. Alright, so that's our first body. I think it turned out just fine. We don't, using the path tool, we don't have to worry about extra pixels that were left behind if we were erasing or using a different technique. So I will always use the path tool on anything I can get away with, and then just do the manual extraction on the parts that need it and add those to it later. So I am going to shut up and go through the rest of these, and I'll speed this up in the video, but you'll be able to see me do the entire project. So I'm going to get at it, and I'll see you in a bit. So like I said, let's put these in a folder. I don't care what to call it, but I hate when things start getting a little too busy here. So get rid of those as well. Alright. So let's go back to our image here. I'm just going to use the free select tool to grab the individual heads to work with. And I'm going to do these separately. It gives you more freedom. I could do them all in one selection, try to work on them, but these two are on the same color background, which may make it worth doing them together. But if you do them separate, you have more layers, but you have more freedom to work on them individually as well. And we don't have to be precise here. So put that up there. Make sure you're copying from the layer you want to copy from. So make sure we capture everything. And we'll grab that. And we'll grab this guy. Alright. So now we got the headless horseman. Actually, I'll probably use a background like this. Now the way I'm going to attempt to do this, actually let me drop it, make sure I got all the pieces that I need. Yes. Alright. I'm going to use color erase and then try using the curve tool on the alpha channel. You should see what I mean, and hopefully this will work and I don't look like a complete fool. So what I'm going to do is take this one first. I've got a nice solid color to deal with. So I'm going to select the color, and you can do that with your paintbrush just by hitting the control, and you see it turns into an eyedropper. So I'm going to try and find a color of the background. As you can see, it puts it up there. Now I'm still on color erase. I'm going to use a fuzzier brush this time, and we're going to start erasing. And try to go just into the hair a little bit. Like that. Alright. So now that we've got that color out of there, the one, looks really sloppy. But what we did is we made those pixels semi-transparent. And that gives us a way to actually tweak on them. So my next attempt to get rid of the rest of that background is to use our curves tool. And I've got it preset here. Now this is an advanced tool beyond the capabilities of the levels tool. It lets you work on each individual color or the alpha channel. Alpha channel being your transparency. It's either full alpha or zero alpha. So we're going to go right to the alpha channel because we made a lot of these pixels semi-transparent. And now what I'm going to do is drag this and get rid of those semi-transparent pixels. And that's looking pretty good already. Now I'm sure if we zoom in, let's change the background. Let's see a little bit. Let's see what it looks like on black. doesn't look like I went far enough in on some of those. But let's do it again then and make sure I get up into those and delete those. Just a little bit around here. The reason I'm using a fuzzy brush, it'll give me a decent line, but it's not a very hard edge. Actually, I probably don't even need to do the alpha channel on that one anymore. I think that looks pretty darn good. Alright, let's get the next one. Work with a gray background. So this, we've got more than one color. So we could probably do it twice, but let's just see how it goes. So I'm going to take a medium color there, and we're going to erase. Now you can see it's not taking out the lines of that building, but that's okay. Let's try doing that. We can take that color straight out of it as well. A little bit of the dark. Alright, let's see how we do there. Go back to our curves tool. We want to select our alpha channel and tweak it in. Alright, that's actually looking pretty good too. Now if this was a lot bigger image, we'd probably really get in there and do some more tweaking, but since this image is only going to be about that big, that's more than enough adjustment. So let's go to our last one. Grab this color. Oops. Grab this color and start erasing. Let's see. And the more time you spend trying to be accurate, the less you'll have to do in the long run. Plus, it'll just make you happy. Just want to get right to where the light, where that color blends into the hair. So you got to find that hairline. Now, this one has more wisps and it's a bigger sample, so if we're going to have any problems with this techniques, it should show up on this one. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's see what we can do. I'm liking it. Looks like there's a little bit of color in there. We could probably tweak out, but we got our little hair wisps here and here. And let's see. Oops. I'm going to do a really fuzzy brush for this one. Not sure if I should even mess with that. Let's see what that looks like out. Kind of breaks it up. Another thing I could do, I'm just going to give it a shot here, is I'm going to go to the saturation brush. Where's it at? It's yep, there it is. And try and desaturate that color. There we go. Alright, well, I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Now we could spend some time if we want to and add some shadows under the shoe tips like the original had. Um, Sky's the limit now that we have our basic outlines done. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new layer with just the render, and I'm going to save it as well. And then we can work from that, and we can come back and grab individual pieces if we want. So let's look at this. To use it in a clearart, get rid of this boundary. First I'm going to auto crop the image and get rid of everything on the edges. Now we can move these pieces around if we want to, but I'm just going to see how it looks straight up right now. So I've cropped that. I'm going to scale it. The height, this is going to be taller than wide, so the height, I think so, yeah. The height is 562 for a clearart. I like to leave a couple pixels at the top, so in case a shadow wants to go a pixel or two. So I normally do scale to 558. And now we'll make our canvas 1000 by 562, which is our clearart specification. You can center it, but I'll just drag it here. And that's add some background layers. And one of the things I like to do is I use a shortcut, but you can snap to image edge. And oops, make sure I didn't. Alright, I did. And then when you move, it'll snap right into those edges. Makes alignment a lot easier if you want to move stuff around, especially logos. You can get it right to the edge that way. So speaking of logo, let's grab our logo here, and we can go to the source export and drag that right in there. And I'm going to crop this layer. Right now it's 800 by 310. I use my layer crop shortcut, and now you can see the boundary, and it'll snap right into the four corners, which makes it easy to figure things out. Now turn off the layer boundary. So I haven't decided what I want to do with this yet, but I'll probably move these guys around a bit, put them on their own separate layer. Oops, I copied from the wrong layer. There we go. Getting ahead of myself. Let's try this again. There we go. Now we can move these guys around, put the logo in front, and we can even do something like that if you want. Heck, we could put somebody in the bullseye if we wanted to, but let's just start there. And I'll probably move this guy over just a hair as well. And if I use my modifiers, I can take that out of there. Now you can see we got three separate pieces we can work with, and we can align and add drop shadows, add effects of some sort if we want to. We can make this guy stand in front of the car if we want to. Oh, the last thing is this license plate. I'll show you that real quick. So I'm going to grab, oops, I forget, Control Z doesn't work on that. You got to escape. I'm going to grab this text, from the car, paste it onto a new layer. Now we'll start by flipping it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is use the perspective tool, which should be this guy. Alright. Get rid of all those lines. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn that layer off, make our transparency somewhere where you can see both at the same time. And then we're going to make it fit. And this will keep the perspective proper. As you can see, I'm trying to line it up to the letters from behind, and basically the same shape and size. That may not be perfect, but let's take a look. Pretty good. It needs to actually drop down a little bit here on the right. We may just be able to get away with a rotate. Just a pixel or two. I think that's looking a little bit better. Drop it down just to center a little bit more. Nah. I think that actually works. So now that's been turned back around properly. And I mean, you can make that a clear art if you want. Let's go ahead and save a project file for clearart. And now it's up to you to decide how you want to lay out your elements. If you were smart, you would have done this ahead of time and figured out exactly what you wanted to do and then achieved it. But I'll leave the creativity part up to you, and I just want to show you the steps to get it done. And I think I'll probably play with this a little more and try to make it acceptable, add some shadows and such, but hopefully you got the idea. Alright, that's probably the end of this series. Everything else can be handled in individual tutorials for certain subjects, but that should cover being able to make most of the type of fan art that we accept. If you go through the first 5 tutorials, you should have learned most of the skills. Alright, don't be afraid to ask questions in the forum or request tutorials on certain subjects, or bring up stuff where I screwed up and I need to clarify. So until I see you again, take care.